Hey, Doc, what was that you were smoking in the lab? It looked like a cigarette, but it wasn't lit.
Oh, it's an electronic cigarette. I designed it myself. Pretty neat, huh?
Electronic cigarette.
Yep, a liquid in the filter that turns into vapor, and you inhale the microparticles.
So that was vapor.
I'd actually rather be smoking normal cigarettes, but not in that room. The smoke would wreck the precision equipment in there, ruin all its wiring. But the vapor is just steam. It doesn't contain tar or anything like that. So I can smoke it in the lab with no worries.
Nice.
Want to try one?
Nah, I'll stick with cigars.
Yeah, but...
I don't like imitations. The real thing's always better.
Okay. But you know, sooner or later, smoking's gonna become very unfashionable across the world. It hurts you and those around you. Electronic cigarettes might not seem so bad then.
Yeah, when that happens, I'll think about it. You said your dad was involved in the Manhattan Project, right?
Yeah?
And you think that's why you can't walk?
I don't know. Actually, you know, probably not. So far, nobody's found evidence that exposure to radiation in parents causes genetic defects in children, except for those exposed in the womb. Epidemiologically speaking, anyway.
That's the conclusion of the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission.
Right. The ABCC commenced its study immediately after the war, and it's still ongoing.
Even now, 30 years later.
The effects of radiation exposure last a long time. I'm guessing it'll be another 10 years before we get a real verdict on whether it affects genes. Granted, it's the most massive study anybody's ever done. But that's really all it is, a study. The ABCC brought in bomb victims and ran tests on them, but they didn't treat them.
Really? Them too, huh?
At any rate, that's what my father made me believe when I was growing up.
Maybe it was tough for your dad to explain. Ever think of that?
Yeah, maybe. But this is my problem now, Snake. I have to face the nukes head on, whether I like it or not. My creations are being used for the wrong purposes. The onus is on me to stop it somehow. Help me, Snake. Hey, as long as I'm here at Mother Base, why not assign me to the R&D team? You could use a guy like me.
Glad to have you on board. I'm sure Kaz is, too.
Once I've got the necessary materials and design specs together, I should be able to start building you that bipedal weapon platform. Nothing would make me happier than for my research to help put a stop to Peace Walker.
So this Dr. Strangelove was at NASA?
Yeah. Well, actually, Strangelove left for DARPA not long after I joined.
And then the two of you ended up back together doing research in Costa Rica.
Not exactly together. We coordinated on a few things, but the research projects themselves were separate from each other. We had it worked out so that Dr. Strangelove handled the mammal pod, Peace Walker's cerebrum, while I did the rest.
That letter, something to do with your research?
Huh? No, it's yeah, it's a report. Research findings.
Research findings? Anything in there we could use against Peace Walker?
Nothing. Nothing at all. Just don't read it, okay? Promise me you won't? Did you, give that letter to Dr. Strangelove?
No.
Why not? I gave it to you for a reason. It's highly important information.
Sorry. I didn't exactly have an opportunity to play postman.
Well, next time you see her, you make sure she gets it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Better for you if she doesn't.
Snake!
What?
Tell me you didn't read the letter.
No.
You did!
I mean, you never know what kind of information could affect the outcome of an operation, right? So
you read the letter, after I specifically told you not to.
What do you expect people to do when you tell them not to read something?
I thought I knew you, Snake. I thought I could trust you. But now I see I was wrong.
Look, I'm sorry, but I just don't get what you see in her.
Well, I wouldn't expect a barbarian who opens other people's private correspondence to understand.
Fine then. Deliver it yourself.
Huh? What? No way. I could never...
You've got a long way to go, Huey.
You ever see the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Can't say I have.
Fantastic flick. The outer space special effects are incredible enough, but the depiction of AI is what really stands out.
There's an AI?
Yeah, a spacecraft pilot AI called HAL. It plays a major role in the story. Dr. Strangelove loves it too. Did I ever tell you about the time we first met up in Costa Rica?
No.
You know how she hates men, right? So we hadn't seen each other since NASA, and we just weren't hitting it off. Until we started talking about HAL, and then she started going off. The way she talked about it was so intellectual. The way she analyzed every plot detail, how passionate she was about the AI. It made me fall for her all over again. You know what? Here's to HAL for bringing her and me closer together. You should ask her about 2001 too. Then you'll understand just how amazing she is.
Amazing, huh?
HAL. Now there's a good name.
So, you were with ARPA before you came here, huh?
Yes. Back then, it was really the only place I could make a living from my AI research.
And before that?
I started out at NASA. That's where I met her.
When Boss went into space?
Yes. It was that incident that turned me away from aerospace engineering. Space is entirely too hazardous a place for human beings. That was why I felt an immediate need to develop AI. As it turned out, rockets later became much safer, and mankind reached the surface of the moon. In any event, it was a hollow Cold War victory. When you get down to it, a nuclear missile is just a rocket with a nuclear warhead strapped to it. Thus, taking the initiative in the space race was tantamount to a military show of force.
But the budgetary strain was too big for Washington or Moscow to handle.
Yes, and then there was the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War. And then came détente. Having leapt ahead of the Soviet Union with its moon landing, America shut down the Apollo program in '72. It was around then that ARPA was downsized and renamed DARPA, the D standing for Defense. With few prospects for continuing my AI research, Coldman's invitation was a godsend. It was also a chance to have them collect data on her.
The end result being this mess.
But we did learn something valuable from her. The nobility of peace.
Why'd you agree to come here? To Mother Base?
You intrigued me.
Me? Hold on. You're not planning on modeling your next AI after me?
Not a bad idea, but I have no intention of ever again attempting to transplant human thought into machines.
Oh, that's a relief.
You are the man who inherited the boss's will. You're gathering people around you, even now, shaping them, building a new organization. I'd like to see how it turns out.
You're not planning to go back to AI research?
I never said such a thing. Of course my work will continue.
Here?
In my eyes, the growth of MSF as an organization is analogous to the development of the nervous system. The way you become intertwined, stimulate each other, branch out in new directions, it's really quite inspirational.
Interesting way to put it.
Of course, I intend to repay you for your hospitality. The fruits of my research will be at your disposal. Why not assign me to the R&D team? I promise you won't be disappointed.
You know, that ID card I got from Huey wouldn't let me into the lab.
Of course not. I deactivated it.
Why?
As though I'd let him into my lab.
Oh, you don't seem to care for him much, even though you two are in the same field.
Oh, please. For starters, I can't stand that wishy-washy attitude of his. If he's got something to say to me, he should be a man and come say it in person, not write some furtive letter.
But if his card doesn't work, how's he supposed to—
And another thing, the way he always demeans himself. Every other sentence begins with, I could be wrong, but... Why can't he just do what he does and be confident about it?
Well, there was the thing about his dissertation being plagiarized.
The real problem is he doesn't have a whit of independence in him. In Costa Rica, and even back at NASA, he was always following people around, asking if there was some way he could help. Why doesn't he stop his whining, take a stand, and face up to me?
I think I know how he feels.
And to top it all off, he seems to enjoy referring to himself by that nickname I gave him. I simply don't get it. How can he be so submissive?
So, Huey was a nickname you gave him.
That's right. I took it from the name of a drone in the science fiction film Silent Running.
Drone?
It's a type of worker robot. The way he follows people, just waiting for them to boss him around, is so similar. I couldn't help myself. Oh, it's an American film directed by Douglas Trumbull, the man who did the special effects for 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Imagine that. A scientist who likes science fiction.
And that's not all.
There's more.
He's a man.
Hang on. I seem to remember you saying he should be more of a man.
Yes. Well, he is an awfully good scientist. Without his reptile pod, my mammal pod wouldn't function, just as the cerebrum can't exist without the cerebellum and the brainstem. He did a fine job of designing it. I'll give him that.
That sounded suspiciously like praise.
It's merely an objective observation. I like people who possess the will to move forward. I have no time for those who refuse to take control of their lives. Until he does, my opinion remains the same.
So, you and Cecile seem to be enjoying yourselves back at that lab.
What are you insinuating? I only kept her because I didn't want our secret to be known.
And the personal baths? You could have left her in there alone and locked the door from the outside.
Yes, well, she seemed anxious, so I...
Now, why would she be anxious?
She was beautiful. I was only admiring her beauty.
She was terrified.
I never meant her any harm. She knew that. I know she did.
But she felt like she was in enough danger to run away.
No matter what I did, if Coltman found her, she would have been... You're right. The truth is, I wanted to save her. But not if it meant forestalling the completion of Mammal.
So you made it easy for her to escape?
Do you really think I am that soft? I'll admit security wasn't exactly tight. It wouldn't have been difficult for her to escape from the building.
Seemed like she had a rougher time after she got out.
At any rate, I never did anything to her to deserve any blame. Is that clear?
Okay. I believe you.
Huey's probably mentioned this, but just to be clear, there's a limit to the parts we can produce here at Mother Base. Therefore, I've built Zeke's AI using memory boards you pulled from other AI weapons.
Will that work?
In the human brain, individual functions are spread across multiple regions. The same is true of AI. Multiple parts sharing the same function interlink to strengthen that function. For example, the more sensor memory boards you have, the greater Zeke's search and detect capabilities will be. Install more movement boards, and you'll increase its mobility.
Meaning the AI's capabilities change depending on how much memory we give it?
Exactly. The more boards you install, the more powerful a function will be.
How's the Zeke AI different from Peace Walker's?
Zeke's AI isn't a replica of the human thought process. It isn't programmed to make decisions about nuclear retaliation. On the other hand, it is capable of highly independent action in combat when given orders from a pilot. It can protect infantry, destroy the enemy, and, if ordered...
launch a nuke.
Let us hope it never comes to that.
My sentiments exactly. What if you hadn't used the boss as the model for the AI?
What do you mean?
If the end goal is MAD, it seems like there are more suitable models out there. A military chief of staff, or a nuclear technician, even the president.
Patriotism, leadership, good judgment. Each of those qualities is essential when deciding whether to launch a nuke. And she had them all.
Wouldn't the president, too?
It's not enough. She had the will for it.
Will?
Let me explain, Snake. Peace Walker is a standalone weapon. It has to decide on its own whether or not to launch a nuke. It can't turn to anyone else for advice. It can't do its job if it's not prepared to take sole responsibility for the fate of the world. I know of no other human being who could bear that burden.
That's it?
There were technical considerations, of course. To begin with, the female brain is a more appropriate model for an AI.
Oh, wait, the female brain? What do you mean by that, modeling your AI after the female brain?
Snake, what is the human mind capable of that a computer is not?
Being lazy?
Interesting response. And not incorrect. But the answer I was looking for was empathy.
Empathy?
The ability to feel for others, to be more precise. Love for a child. Pity for the weak. Grief for the dead. All of these are particularly well developed in the female brain.
That's stretching it a little.
On the contrary, it's perfectly reasonable. The male brain, on the other hand, may be well suited for systematic thinking, but it's less able to empathize. In that sense, it's closer to a computer. So if your objective is to make the AI think more like a human...
You need to teach it how to empathize like a woman.
The novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, deals with this very problem. In the book, an empathy test is used to distinguish between machines and human beings. As machines become more and more advanced, our society will gradually become more and more systematic. Our cities will teem with robot-like people, unable to feel for others. We cannot allow that to happen. Computers must learn to empathize. The same goes for humans, only more so.
Well, what about yourself? You make these claims, and yet I've never seen you empathize with a real person.
It's true. Until now, I was a prisoner of death. It was my intention to die upon the completion of Mammal's development. She was my one reason to live.
But you changed your mind.
I did. Because she taught me the dignity of living. My eyes are open now. I want to go on living and seeing real people.
Huh. I see. Is it really necessary to make machines think like humans? I think empathy would get in the way of making the decision to retaliate.
I admit, human thought may not be fully compatible with level-headed decision-making. Then again, is there such a thing as non-human thought? The moment computers became so advanced that they could calculate faster than human beings, a new dream was born.
Dream?
If we can create a machine that can do advanced mathematics, why can't we create one that can think like a human? The 19th century author, Auguste Villiers-L'Isle-Adam, wrote a book called Tomorrow's Eve, in which the protagonist fashions an artificial woman to serve as his ideal lover. I believe the idea of creating an intelligent being with our own hands is one of mankind's oldest dreams.
So AI is a product of people's dreams, then?
Not only AI, civilization itself is the process by which mankind gives form to its dreams. But not all dreams are pleasant. Some have expressed fears about non-human intelligence.
Yeah, they want the benefits with none of the risks.
Some fear that intelligent robots might rise up and rebel against their human masters, as portrayed by the Czech writer Karel Čapek in his Rossum's Universal Robots, or in the 1970 film Colossus, the Forbin Project, where intelligent supercomputers in the US and the Soviet Union join forces and plot to subjugate humanity. Isaac Asimov offered a specific solution to these fears with his 3 laws of robotics, which demonstrated that while robot intelligence is different from that of humans, the two can coexist. In order to endow computers with intelligence, we must first have a thorough understanding of what intelligence is, and that is where the need for a practical and feasible expert system arises.